Meet St. Tammany is designed for us to promote the businesses of St. Tammany Parish. And Martha Stout is making a huge impact on our area. What she's doing is she's helping the senior community move from their current home into the next phase of their life. And she has a great passion behind it. And so if you want to learn about how she's adding value to that group and how somebody who's in business can really focus on an ideal client, tune into this conversation with Martha Stout. All right, welcome to Meet St. Tammany podcast. Very excited today to have Ms. Martha Stout, real estate agent at Engel and Völkers. Thanks for coming and hang out with us today.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Very happy to be here.
So I think we like to talk to business owners on all of our platforms about being intentional about who they're marketing to. And and it's funny how most real estate agents, their answer is, I'll do business with anybody. And it makes it really hard to do business whenever you do business with everybody, because then you don't have a unique, a focused message. And I think it's critical to being successful and not feeling like you're chaotic or throwing spaghetti at the wall. And
becoming a specialist.
Yes.
Well, that's the main thing, right?
And I think that you having your unique focus on the senior community and your Golden Keys program, along with the other ways you market your business, makes you unique. And so I'm excited to tell people about why that's important. Why you focus on that group, and what we also can do to help collaborate with you on helping service those clients. So thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very excited because it is something I'm very passionate about.
So let's talk about what the Golden Keys program is for you as a real estate agent. What is that?
So for me, it is helping people who are ready to downsize. What happens is people have lived in their home for maybe decades, raised their family, maybe you've lost a spouse, and the upkeep is just ridiculous, and the maintenance, and it's just too much overhead. And they're ready to do less. They're ready to do more enjoying life instead of being so encumbered. So there's many, many ways this could go. It could be, do we look for what people call 55 and up living? Is this something that can just be a condo where somebody else cuts the grass for you? Or is it something that you maybe want a little assistance in your living? So there's so many areas that it could go to. It could go from, condo living to maybe a 55 and up community to maybe independent living or assisted living in some sort of situation. And that could maybe evolve into medical needs down the road.
Right.
And this is the foresight I want people to have when they get to this part of transitioning. And there's always the emotional part. Is this too soon? There's so many questions that people are afraid to ask about this. What are my kids going to say? All of it. So go ahead.
So you made a good point. So what is the first step, right? There's a whole bunch of things that you could seem like be cart before the horse. But if you're at that age in your life and you start feeling that it is becoming a burden to manage this house that you no longer need all of anymore, what's the first step? What do you need to do as a person who's not the family of what is that person's first step to start coming to grasp with whether this is the right time for that?
You phrased that very well, because they do emotionally have to come to grasp with it. Mm-hmm. You have so many memories and so much history there to let go of, and then deciding how to declutter, what to keep, what not to keep, what do the heirs and the kids want, what can be given away or sold, what can go to. And this is something that Golden Keys does. We have concierge for everybody down the line. So if you need estate sales, we have that person in line, those people set up. If you need packers, we have white glove moving companies that will come in, pack what you have chosen to keep, not only move you, but unpack you as well.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Where was that when we built our house?
Yeah, so this is Golden Keys' goal, to be able to provide that for everybody. And along with the concierge of the declutter and the packing and where to go, which facilities fit you, is the legal side. And the problem with that is most people don't want to deal with it, or they wait too late to deal with it. And so the best case scenario is everybody's of right of mind, and this is a decision made on their own, without having it be a medical need or a mental need or something that has caused them to have to make this transition. So you asked what's kind of the process or the order of things. And though I listed logistically the physical things that need to be done to make this whole move successful that Golden Keys can provide you the concierge for, not only do I help you sell your biggest asset to make these things affordable, but I want to provide every step of the way. And the main thing that's overlooked is the legalities. What do I need to have in place? Do I need a will? What about the assets? Where do they go? Should there be someone appointed, power of attorney? What's a trust versus, all of these questions that I want to be able to say, I'm also collaborating here with Arena Title, and the lawyers there can help you to decide this, to decide what's the best for your given scenario.
For sure.
I think it's beautiful because that age is just unnecessarily targeted with ridiculous estate planning packages. Like the number of times that we go through situations where somebody sold them this binder, and I promise you the binder itself is probably worth more than some of the documents in it, and unnecessarily placing assets in trust. There are places for someone to have a trust, but unfortunately that age group in our community gets solicited for these packages that don't fit their needs.
Right.
And it winds up causing more headaches down the road. Right? So being careful, having someone like you that can advise them, give them someone local that they can go talk to.
That's important.
Understand their situation, customize it to their needs and their family's needs, right? Rather than calling the number online or the flyer you get on the mail from somebody that's out of state. I mean, Louisiana is so nuanced with their property laws and their estate planning laws.
Yes, indeed.
And unfortunately, they have a lot of people from out of state, larger national companies that dabble and they don't understand those nuances. So I applaud you for being out in the community. You are doing a much needed service to get ahead of that issue.
And to piggyback on what she's saying, we encourage people to start their estate planning process much earlier in their life, right? So
as soon as you buy a house, as soon as you have a kid, you don't need to wait, right? But it's even more imperative though when you get to that 55.
Sure, but you're right, it should be in place.
Unfortunately, I feel like more and more people are waiting because they just don't want to have that conversation. And maybe like just having lawyers available in the past may have seemed like it was only for certain people, and you didn't have access to lawyers like you do now. I mean, like part of what our objective is to make people feel like they can come in here and ask questions earlier in their life about these things and feel more comfortable. I know for me, at 35 years old, when I wrote my will, I felt a lot more comfortable with it. I wasn't thinking about those end of life types of things. So it was easy for me to just kind of write it down and get that plan. And then what we like to do at Arena is that if you have an existing plan, you can come back to us, let us look at it. And if there's no holes in it, we're not going to sell you something you don't need. We're going to tell you, this still works for what you need, or maybe we can make a couple small changes for you and then move on with your life and don't really worry about having to revamp a whole estate plan. But the reality of it is that a lot of times things can change in your life to where the plan that you put in place when you're 35 is not the same plan at 45 or 55 or at 65, 75, 85 years old. And so it's important to know that you can go back to that place and have them look at it, and they're not going to upsell you, like Lauren said, on a trust, and they're not going to try to take advantage of your situation. They're going to give you the advice that you need. And like when we talk to people about like something like a power of attorney, right? One of the things that we discussed before is how do you prevent an issue before closing if somebody loses capacity before closing, or during closing if something happens to somebody. And a power of attorney is usually a good way to assure that somebody's going to either be represented by themselves or somebody else can represent them. But those things can change too, right? You have a power of attorney put in place at one point, and you maybe give your kid the authority to represent you, and then that kid moves out of state, and it's just not practical for that person to now be representing you anymore. So you need to go find the next person that's really going to be available, or you just you add a second person that can help. And so those are the conversations that we're having with people, and I think that you are providing the resource by connecting with somebody like us who can give them that advice, knowing they're not going to get it taken advantage of, but making sure they're ready for whatever's coming down the pipe over the last quarter of their life.
Right. And, the thing with wills, grandkids come along, so you got to change that as time goes on. And power of attorneys, there are different jobs that they can do. There's different levels
different
of
purposes entirely
for each one. Yeah. And then there's the medical side, not just who takes care of the financial
100%.
side or makes the decisions. And these are questions that people are really afraid, and this is what I've come across mostly. They're just afraid to ask.
Right.
So,
until they need it.
Well, even then, they wait too long, right?
Yeah.
So my thing is to have these questions out. So, and make them like now. So anybody watching this can go, yeah, I really was curious about that. Or, gee, I didn't want to say, but yeah. So I have a couple of
ahead.
scenarios I'd like to ask about. You go ahead with what
Well, I have a question for you because I think that it's important for people to hear this because some people who might listen to this might be somebody at that phase of their life and know that okay, Martha's there to help. I can reach out to Arena, but also we like to include the family, right? If you're at that age in your life and you have somebody in your family that's going to be representing you, we want you and them to both know what that actually means.
Yes.
But also to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Because when we draft a power of attorney, or what I like to tell people is that you're supposed to be acting in that person's best interest, and in a certain way, living up or performing the actions and tasks or doing what that person would want you to do for them, right? Like I have this medical power of attorney in place. I want my kid to know that in this scenario, I would want them to tell the doctor this is what I would want and give that permission, as opposed to the kids not necessarily knowing that and taking the action that they think that their parent would take or their loved one would take, or what they think should be done, which is not necessarily always the way that those documents are really contemplated to be,
it's
right?
two standards: a fiduciary standard, which is your legal standard of acting in the best interest, but to Jared's point, truly understanding what they believe is in
if they
their
want
best
a
interest.
DNR or not, if they want, so making sure you're not just there to have control, but to provide for them what they would have wanted. Could they
Facilitate their
speak for
wishes.
themselves?
And so how do you,
Exactly.
so my question to you, just to get back to my question, because we incorporate the family as often as we can, but for you, how do you incorporate the family in this decision to sell this house?
Well, that's an interesting question because this is what happens more than not is turns out that there's usually, no matter how many kids in the family, there's one child that takes care of the remaining spouse, mom or dad, whomever it is. And statistically, it's the woman who's still alive. So mom's now getting up there, and there's one. Statistically, it's a female, but there are gentlemen who take care of their moms and whatever parents, the surviving spouse, and they have to go to them and say, we think it's time, the old car key question, is it time for you to, we're worried about you falling. So often it is the adult children that approach me and say, look, my mom's house, we got to sell it. We need the asset to move into another phase or that sort of thing. So I do include the entire family that's willing to participate in a conversation. If it is an adult child that comes to me, I will speak with the siblings first before, and then I will approach it with, here's a list of questions that people either are afraid to ask or haven't asked yet. And so, because people don't want to say it out loud sometimes. So if I've already addressed it and put it out there, they'll go, oh, yeah. So for instance, let me tell you a scenario I get. So if it's been a long-term ownership, what is that? How does that work? If I have a client who's owned their home for decades, what legal items do they need to check first? What surprises come up with long-term ownership? What should be handled before me as a real estate agent lists that house for them? Do you all have some input on what you would suggest for that kind of scenario?
I think it ties directly into just going ahead and starting the estate plan because it's one big plan that you're putting together, right? And our estate planning package is 5 separate documents. It's going to be your will, which is say where your assets go. And that's so important because part of I'm selling this home, but what are those proceeds going to be used for?
Yes.
Matters. And it matters what we're doing with those proceeds, whether you want to trust, whether you need long-term care, whether you have long-term care insurance. All of that factors into what you're going to be doing with the transition of that asset. So the will is imperative. And Louisiana is unique because we have intestate laws, meaning there are laws that will tell you what will happen to your assets if you don't have a will.
Napoleonic Code.
The biggest thing is that people don't understand those laws. They think that we're a community property state, so everything goes to your spouse. And unfortunately, that's not the case, right? It actually passes to your children. So community property means you own it, 50-50, but your portion, your separate portion, your 50% will pass to your children. So one of the biggest things we get in this transition phase is they want to go sell those assets and they're surprised when we call them and tell them that their children are co-owners in the house with them. The surviving spouse is surprised because that deceased spouse didn't have a will and now they're in co-ownership with their children. And the surprise of the entire family can really disrupt this plan.
Right.
So having that conversation at the forefront is very important. Second to that is, if you're having that before you've lost a spouse, then you can avoid that issue. We do a system all the time. We call it the sweetheart will, which is all the assets go to the surviving spouse first, then those assets would then be passed to the children. So it avoids that caveat of co-ownership or any of the children having control over those assets before they wouldn't necessarily need to. And then the other part that's very important that you talk about your estate plan before you list the house is the power of attorney, because most people will come to us and say, like, I have a diagnosis, so I need to hurry up and get a power of attorney. It may be too late. Depending upon what the doctor put on those records, you may not be able to sign to give someone agency. And so your only other option is then to go through the court system to have someone appointed, and you actually have to say that they no longer have capacity. No one wants to sue their parents to prove to them that they don't have capacity.
Right.
It's expensive, but it's emotionally tolling.
Nasty, yeah.
Yeah, so
And
having
the
that
court
power of
doesn't-
attorney in advance, then we can move forward with the transaction with no issue, no matter how quickly that person digresses.
And to piggyback on what she's saying, like that interdiction process with the court system, you can imagine that the courts don't want to get in the business of taking people's capacity from them.
Right.
So you have to actually like have very strong evidence to do that, which usually requires
Testimony from your doctors.
testimony from doctors, and that means you have to pay those doctors to take time out of their day to come to court, and it gets even more expensive. Not just your lawyer fees, but your expert witness fees. So those things cost money, and so it's much easier for you to plan earlier in your life before you're 55. But when you get to that age and you start having people start putting in your ear, you need to do it.
Yeah.
I highly recommend that you do that earlier.
Because that is so messy, and it doesn't need to be. It's avoidable by some planning.
And another point that she made too, co-owners, right? When your spouse dies, if you don't have a will, you are co-owners with your children or your spouse's children that are not your biological children of a blended family. And now you really have in a bind whenever your stepchildren, who may or may not have that same feeling towards you as a parent, are now involved with the property.
Yep. Messy, definitely. So yes, that brings me to the question that I get asked a lot. The scenario is the property is in the deceased person name. So if the home is still in a deceased spouse's or parent's name, can it be sold?
Yeah, the answer is yes if it's in the deceased spouse's name. And we tell people oftentimes that if you are working with a law firm and a title company that are under the same roof, Arena Law Firm, Arena Title Company, that process is much more efficient because we can do the succession and the closing at the same time. And people say, well, I'm just taking my spouse's property, or I was written in the will that I'm going to get my spouse's property. Yes, that will ultimately happen. But if you think about it practically, we have to connect the dots in the courthouse from the public records from the current owner to the new owner, the heirs. And if you go to the public records and not letting the court know and the record know that that person's passed away, it looks like they're still alive and they still own that property.
Right.
So it's our job to put in the record the paperwork, which is going to be a succession filing with the court signed by a judge that conveys ownership to the buyer or to the heirs. Put that in the record, showing the connection with that deceased person and who their children are, that allows that child now to sell. And that just takes time. It could take 2 weeks if it's a simple affidavit of succession. It could take up to a month if it's a judicial succession, meaning it has to go through the courthouse. So like that last piece of it, like getting that paperwork through the system, just takes time, and we have to do that. So even though the will may give the property to the surviving spouse, or ultimately the kids are going to give it to them, we still have to go through that process of doing the succession in order for it to happen.
Right. And sometimes time is important. It does take time for this process to happen. And if somebody does, say, take a fall, and they need to be put in a home or assisted living, even if it's an independent assisted living scenario, you have to have these things happen fast, and so having this stuff prepared and pre-done is key. And I think it really comes down to just educating the people about it, because you all brought up a couple of scenarios that nobody would think of if they didn't know the civil law here.
Yeah.
So probate, how does that play into it?
That is the succession process in Louisiana.
The difference is?
It's really cool because we do have 3 different ways that we can go through the probate process, which again, Louisiana word for that is just succession. And so we do have an affidavit of succession process, but it's very limited in nature because you can't have assets over $125,000 and you can't have a will. So it's a limited instance that we can use that. The value of having a will is this middle ground probate process that we call simple possession. This allows you to just by affidavit, meaning notarized document only, submit all the documents to the judge and have them sign one judgment of possession without anyone having to appear in court. So it saves time. Like you said, it has to happen quickly. It saves time and it absolutely saves you money. And so if you have everything clearly written in the will, which would make it very difficult for anybody to contest those things, and everybody understands you have a plan, you go through simple possession. And we do that by the time you list the property and you're ready to close within that 30 to 45 day process. We're trying to, make that happen for you because it's usually a 4 to 6 week process, not on our end, but it has to pass through the judge's desk as well. So if we can do simple possession, it's very helpful. And then that third leg is an actual succession proceedings, which you get someone appointed. Then with that appointment, they can sell the asset. If you have someone appointed, though, the proceeds of that sale go into an account that you have to create for the estate, and they don't necessarily become fully accessible to the heirs until the judgment of possession is rendered at a later date, right? And that's another really big caveat because we have people that may go to another firm instead of staying within Arena, and they start the succession proceedings, and that attorney believes they're helping them, right? And so they go and get them appointed because they know they can do that faster. And then we come to the closing table and we cut a check to the estate, and all the heirs are at the table frustrated because they're not leaving with a check.
Right.
And it's like, well, unfortunately, you're not in possession of this asset yet. So it has to stay within the estate. So then they have to get a tax ID number for the estate, open a bank account, and then deposit the funds to be able to use it on behalf of the estate.
Yeah.
So those little nuances can make or break a real estate transaction, or the experience, I should say, that the heirs are already going through. And from our side, when we know we're dealing with someone that's already grieving, emotions
Right.
are already heightened, right? So we want to make it as seamless as possible. So that's a big reason why our law firm handles estate planning and successions, because it makes it easier to facilitate these real estate transactions.
And I'll say, maybe we're biased because we see it often, but a lot of secessions happen because of the secession. A lot of secessions happen because the real estate transaction needs to be done.
Right.
People will kind of wait until something has to happen, and then you
Yes.
realize you can't do this sale of this real estate without it. Then you'll get the secession done. Typically.
Right. And you bring up what I was about to say is, as the realtor, I can't sell your property to get that asset financing
Correct.
for you until the succession is done. And if you are a buyer's realtor, the first question they're going to ask me as the seller is the succession clear?
Mhm.
Because they don't want to invest in it if it's not finished and it gets
That's
messy
right.
down the line.
Mhm.
So if you're trying to sell somebody's property, it can have a lot of hiccups in the buyer side because of that not already being put in place.
For sure.
That's right.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd like to ask you one last question before we wrap it up, because I do think that this is important. And you said when you got in here that you were passionate about this Golden Keys program.
Yes.
To close, why don't you tell everybody why you're so passionate about this program and why you're focusing all your time on this program?
Well, I'm personally passionate because of my mother's passing and what that took, and all the details that needed to be in place, and who are the heirs. Fortunately, there was no conflict, but there are many heirs that don't get along, or like you said, step siblings that don't get along. And so that makes it very messy all the way down the line, starting with the medical decisions
Yes.
and then what to do with the assets. So that's very, very important to me to have that as seamless as possible, with the fiduciary duty of being the agent to facilitate that. And then I think what I see more and more is people who really are still very active, older, but don't want all that work. And I see it often, and I want to be able to help. My little catchphrase is, I'm the dream catalyst, and that is the easiest time of life for people supposed to be anyway, right? You've put your time in with your kids, you've put your time in with your work, and now you get to live a little and enjoy it. And it's important to me to be able to facilitate that for people to find where they're comfortable. That's an emotional thing. Am I giving up too soon? Are my kids going to be mad? What about all the kids' belongings
Right.
I've held in my closet for years? Just little things, that are so emotionally tying. And so it's just a passion for me, because I've had parents go through this personally, and I've had many friends who are dealing with parents who aren't ready to go through it, but they are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how to be the person to educate them beforehand, get the information out there for people so that we can make sure I'm not just the one closing the deal and there you go. I want to help them every step of the way as seamlessly as possible.
I love
And
that.
having you guys on hand as a referral is just very meaningful to me because this is the sticky, icky part. The rest is
Yeah.
more labor.
For sure.
So I really appreciate y'all's knowledge and wisdom and availability.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, thank you. I hope that people watch this and realize that you are passionate about this and that you want to help that community out and that you have a great network of people that can help solve problems that you might not be able to be the expert to solve. So I think it's great. I think you're doing a great thing. And I think our community is going to need that more and more over the next couple of years. And I'm thankful for
Amen.
you taking that on.
Thank you. I'm excited
you.
about it.